Hi, my name is Kayla.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Amy.
Our presentation is on the history of disability in the human rights era from 1850 to 1899. The first one here, we're going to start with 1851, where the New York State Asylum for Idiots was established. It was known as the Pioneer Institution in the United States for the care and training of mentally deficient children. And in 1891, it was officially renamed the Syracuse State Institution for Feeble-Minded Children. In 1853, Dr. Alfred Elwin, there's a picture of him to your right in the screen there. A Pennsylvania physician began funding the Pennsylvania Training School for Feeble-Minded Children, which was similar to the Syracuse State Institution for Feeble-Minded Children. It was a private school for children with intellectual disabilities, later became known as the Elwin Institute. In 1857, the National Teachers Association, which is now known to us as the National Education Association, was founded by 43 educators in Pennsylvania. It was the largest professional employee organization committed to advancing the cause of public education. In 1867, the Department of Education was created to help promote student achievement by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access to education for all students. In 1869, the Boston School for Deaf Mutes, which is now known as the Horace Mann School for the Deaf and is still currently having students attend, was founded under the direction of the Boston School Board. It was the first ever free public day school for the deaf. The photo there is an image of Horace Mann, who's responsible for that school. In 1876, Edward Seguin was the first president of the Association of Medical Officers of American Institutions for Idiotic and Feeble-Minded Persons. It evolved into what we now know as the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. Here's a photo of him. In 1899, Elizabeth Farrell pioneered the idea of special classrooms, not special schools, to reintegrate children with disabilities into mainstream schools. She proposed the idea of seeing exceptional students as individuals and not defined by their disability. There's a photo of Elizabeth as well.
So I did the laws enforced by Congress. So in 1864, the U.S. Congress authorized the Columbia Institution of the Instruction of the Deaf, Dumb, and Blind to confer to a college degrees. This was also signed by President Abraham Lincoln. It made it like a bill so they could have a college. Edward Minor Gallaudet was made the president of the entire corporation, which is now a college. It is now known as Gallaudet University and now a school for the deaf and hard of hearing. In 1867, the American Ordinance pertaining to preventing people with disabilities from appearing in public was passed in 1867 in San Francisco, California. This was one of the first states that would pass this law, and it would be later mentioned below. Some of the people were sent to housing called almshouses, which were houses that were created for these people so they could live for free. And also in 1867, the state of Illinois passed a bill which was called the Bill for Protection and Personal Liberty, which guaranteed all people accused of insanity, including wives, had the right to a public hearing. In 1861, a Chicago ordinance in 1881 reads as follows: as any person who is diseased, mutilated, or any way deformed, so as be an unsightly or disgust object or an improper person to be allowed on the streets, highways, or public places. They shall not be exposed to the view of the public. If they do, they're under a penalty of $1, which is now equivalent to actually $20, which I found pretty interesting. This just kind of ties it all together. From the late 1800s to, which I a little found interesting as well, to the 1970s, American cities had unsightly beggar ordinances, which are known as ugly laws. These people were deemed illegal for any person who was diseased, mutilated, or deformed. Like I said before, they were not allowed to expose themselves in public, and if they did, they would also be fined and they could also be put in jail. The picture just kind of shows next to it, there was a book written about it and how people were treated. They had to wear nameplates and what was wrong with them.
Okay, so I did the perception and treatment of individuals with disabilities with regards to special education from 1850 to 1899. And during this time, corporal punishment was often encouraged and used in schools. And at the same time, special education was almost non-existent, and so were students with disabilities. Kayla kind of pre-led into this with some of the laws that were passed where these individuals were not allowed to come out into public, and therefore they were segregated from other students and often forced to be homeschooled or in most cases sent to an insane asylum where their living conditions were very poor. Children were forced to work and some were abused, and there was no education provided whatsoever. Some cases, children were also used as test subjects for medical experiments. On the left, you'll see a picture of a child in an asylum. And then on the right, you can see what it was like during that time for quote unquote normal children. Attempts during this time were made to improve treatment of individuals with disabilities, but families were either required to pay for services or opportunities were sparse. Most of that time it was in big cities that you would see opportunities for those who could not afford it. During this time frame, these children with disabilities were still viewed as mental and were still segregated. And that went on until the 1900s. And here is a list. We have 2 pages of our resources, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation.